Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm your host, Richard Dugan, and I thank you so much for joining us on the radio broadcast at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on a Sunday and Monday mornings at 1 a.m. The broadcast podcasts are available on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, as well as richarddugan.com, the homepage, as well as the radio shows page. And we encourage you, if you can, to support us financially to keep the programs moving forward and take care of all of the ancillary things through PayPal and Patreon accounts. They are for your security as well as ours. We hope that you will do your part and do what you can if you feel led to do so. We'll even take energetic support as well. And we also encourage you to go to our guest's website. We'll be giving you that during the interview so that you can continue your evolutionary process. We also encourage you to spend time in meditation, in prayer, in just quiet time during 2020, the year of perfect vision, and the 2020s, the decade of perfect vision. And we hope that you will do that. Listen to that still small voice, that divine self, your higher self, and follow the promptings. And find that still, small, quiet, peaceful place where you can just relax and get a hold of what's really important in your life. We encourage you to do that. And we also encourage you to stay tuned to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan. Stay tuned. Our program today is going to focus on power. That's right, power. Guess whose? Yours. And we're going to talk about how to create your best life by reclaiming your power. The title of the book is Reclaim Your Power, and it is how to permanently heal unwanted behaviors, chronic conditions, and addictions with Dane Stevens. And Dane, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Richard. It's great to be here. Appreciate your show and appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. I have to say that when we talk about personal power, and of course, it's a subject that has been around for quite some time. And I remember back in the 80s when I first started going to these personal growth and development programs, I was sort of a phrase, maybe not the exact words, but something similar in terms of regaining your power, taking control of your life. But of course, in the 80s, it was, it's my mother and father's fault. It's my teachers. It's the bullies. It's everybody else's fault that I am the way that I am. In the 90s, we started to take a little bit more responsibility as we headed towards the 21st century. It was, guess what? All of the choices that I have made have brought me to where I am today. That basically means I am fully responsible. And through all of that, the whole purpose was to help us to regain our own personal power. And you're introducing the neurotrauma healing process in this book. Again, reclaim your power to create your best life. Let's talk about this aspect of reclaiming. Is it truly that we sort of at one point in our lives, we actually did, consciously or otherwise, we kind of gave it away?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a very deep question. Depends on how far you want to go with that, because as I know that you know, we are energetic beings. Scientifically, we have proven that. We know that everything's circulating, everything's moving, and everything has that, what I'll call love intelligence that is at its core. So in order to play this game of space-time, we had to, so that's the deepest level of that. We had to either cause ourselves to forget or, create a scenario where we have separation. We have a belief in separation. And it's really, interesting because what we do is we help people to reconnect themselves back. And you can never be fully disconnected from it, but we have beliefs in separation from our higher or authentic self, whether it be from your father or your mother, whether it be from that trauma as a child or that, trauma in your adulthood, whatever that is. But what happens is, well, I'll talk more about trauma a bit later, but yes, we split off, and a belief in separation from who we truly are, our authentic or higher self, is created. So that's a very general explanation, and a very general picture. But like you said, did we actually forget? Yes and no.
Yeah,
clear answer.
I no, that's the kind of clarity we get on this program sometimes, and then we keep going to try to delineate it even further.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, in reference to this, trying to understand how the trauma was created within ourselves. I want to start with this aspect. I've often felt that, and well, I feel this way. Words have power, and the words that we choose, consciously or otherwise, are shall we say, marinated in intent, conscious or otherwise. And I think of politics in particular. And I've been told that I've been naive about this, because I would say, well, wait a minute. Words have power, and this person is saying this, and that person is saying that, and this person's saying the other. And it's like, you can't tell me they don't mean what they're saying, because their intent in saying what they're saying is to get that office, to get you to vote for them, to put them in that office. So those words that they're using aren't just politics, air quotes, that no one else can see. And I sit here going, no, those words have power. So let's talk about trauma. You've heard the old saying, which I have found is a lie: sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And the only reason I say that's a lie is because if we choose to believe them, they can hurt us. Talk to us about words and power.
Yeah. And you say choose to believe them. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't choose. It's like we have no choice. And when I'm speaking about that in regards to trauma, most time that's as a child. Mm-hmm. But also, I mean, even as an adult, if you have a car accident, mm-hmm. and you experience trauma. And so, first of all, let me explain what trauma is.
Okay.
And therefore, how words that come beliefs get stuck in our nervous system, and why they get stuck in our nervous system. So, first of all, how a trauma gets created and lodged in our system is things come in through the right brain. The right brain is formless. It's color, sound, imagination. It takes the raw data of that experience and experiences it in its entirety. It then sends it to the left brain to be made sense of, filed, understood. If it's too much, too overwhelming, too scary, too bizarre for that left brain to handle, the left brain rejects it and it sends it back to the right brain. And the right brain does what the right brain does again: sees it, feels it, experiences it in its entirety, and then sends it to the left brain to be made sense of, filed, understood. If it's still too much, too bizarre, too overwhelming, that left brain rejects it, sends it back to the right brain, and the cycle has begun. And this is the nervous system trying to process that event, circling from the left to the right brain, seeing it, feeling it, experiencing it, past the left brain, reject it, and back and over again. So the brain's MO is survival. So it doesn't want this barrage of unwanted information, this potentially dangerous information that it can't understand or make sense of. So it pushes it out of the way, hence to the subconscious. Is it gone? Is that out of the way? Absolutely not. It's still cycling in your nervous system, trying to process itself somewhere trapped in your body. So it's very much alive, just out of your conscious mind, so you can survive, so you can carry on. And in that, how do we know if we have what's termed a trauma? It outpitches itself as some kind of a negative pattern or unwanted behavior in our life, whether it be with your health, your wealth, your relationships, your career, or just anxiety or happiness in your life. if you have a place in your life where you either can't get above, or it keeps happening over and over again, you keep attracting negative relationships, you keep making yourself broke at a certain time, or you keep stopping yourself from progressing in your life, getting sick, whatever, I can pretty much assure you, you have something stuck looping in your nervous system unprocessed.
Well, you have come up with a process that is called the neurotrauma healing process.
Yes.
Now, I can understand trauma healing. Let's talk about neurotrauma healing. What is that?
So neuro refers to the brain. They're neurological. And what we help people do is to consciously process that. So it's not continually looping in your nervous system and therefore out-picturing in your world. And it's quite profound because it's not about coping with it, not about trying to compensate for it, not trying to overcome or blow through it. You get to intimately connect with that part and give yourself either what you didn't get at that time, or you get to correct that erroneous limited belief that keeps creating itself in your life. And when you do that, you are able to, first of all, unfreeze that trauma from looping in your nervous system, and therefore bring it into this present moment where it's not happening anymore. And from that place, that's where you get your power or your choice back. So it's profound because when you unfreeze that from cycling in your nervous system, that tape slows down to the point of stopping when you bring it to resolution. So you no longer have that tape running inside of you. There's nothing to be triggered anymore. And therefore, when you what used to trigger you, whether it be from the car accident, whether it be from a childhood abuse, whether it be from alcoholism, whatever, it's just not there. And that sounds fairly fantastic, but it is profound in that way, and it's really quite simple.
And that's where the paradox lies, because we as human beings don't believe that there is any real value unless it's complicated.
We have so made life complicated.
But you've made this very simple.
Yeah. And it's interesting because if this work had a destination, it would be this present moment where your power only always ever is. This present moment where you have choice and you're connected to what we'll call source. So when we unfreeze these, it brings us back to that place. And we have a lot of information. And so I want to also just clarify trauma, because when I say trauma, some people might tune out because they think of it as, it's a car crash or experience of war or some huge physical, emotional event or abuse that you experienced. So they might not identify with it. But all trauma means is something stuck looping in your nervous system unprocessed. And that happens when something happens that is out of alignment with the truth about us, or something that our system cannot comprehend. It overwhelms our nervous system. That can happen through something like neglect, where it appears like nothing happened, and that's exactly right. But in that neglect, not being paid attention to, not giving, being given the attention that we need, being recognized, we have formed a belief about ourselves that is out of alignment with the truth of our being. And therefore, our outward expression has been altered, our energy has been skewed, and a trauma formed within us, trying to figure that one out. Living with a high-functioning alcoholic, appears that nothing's wrong, and we may not even know that we're on the receiving end of abuse. But alcoholism itself is a form of self-abuse. So once again, we've had to alter our natural expression, our natural energy output, and a trauma has formed trying to compensate for that or figure that out, because it's against our natural, our authentic self. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it makes sense. And we're going to continue to talk about this, because this is something that it's interesting how the way we used to deal with this back in the 60s and 70s, or I should say the 80s and 90s. I was in my single digit years in the 60s. That that was one of the things that was told to us in these personal growth and development programs. I happened to go through an offshoot of EST called LifeSpring back in the early 80s, 80 or 81, I believe it was. And I went through several of those levels. And one of the things, of course, that they did, the process was that they would basically break you down emotionally and mentally and sometimes physically in terms of, long nights into 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. And this was on a weeknight. This was before you got to the Saturday and Sunday sessions. And so you're going off to work exhausted maybe, or maybe you're elated because of some of what was happening. But what they tried to do and what they wanted to do was to get to the core, the root of what's holding you back, of what's blocking you and so forth. And that's really what you're talking about here, but you don't have to spend 3 nights and a weekend doing that. And so forth. Go ahead.
I was just say, and more than that, if you recall that all came from here. It all came from your head, your mind, your idea, or their idea of trying to get it out of you. And I mean, we're trying to go deeper, but in order to go deeper, first of all, it's about trust. And creating that level of trust, not trying to force anything out. Safety is key for me because of what happened in my situation. I had a therapist try to force the trauma out of me, and it messed me up. So trust or safety, safety and trust is just key for me. But the key to this work is inner compassionate connection. And you do not force out trauma. That is the last thing you want to do. Is force out trauma. The biggest trauma I had was somebody who tried to force trauma out of me. That was the biggest trauma I had in my life. So when you can, and this, goes back to the neuro part, we just haven't known how, in a sense, how we work and how simple it can be to unwind that is through a left-right brain process where you kind of reverse what happened. You bring it back out in a safe and gentle manner through a neuro process, through a right brain process. So it's not about force. It's about making an intimate connection and creating such a level of trust that part will unfreeze. And such an intimate connection that you get to literally converse with this part and give that part what it needs, what it didn't get at that time, and what you're not giving yourself now.
There's another aspect of this as well, and you sort of alluded to it. Of course, you alluded to it before we even started the program. I'm curious about our intuition, the messages that we get from within. I have been encouraging people since September of 2019 to spend time going within. And that's where, as I say, you have that perfect 2020 vision, as well as getting that insight and information, encouragement, and so forth, as well as finding that calm, peaceful place. And in the reality of things, if you will, on the metaphysical level, if you can put those two terms together, the only person for whom this information does any good is for the person for whom they have gone within, whether it be through meditation or any other modality, if you will. What about intuition? What about listening to the still small voice, not only in terms of dealing with trauma, but maybe, and again, I would say to our listeners, maybe even in considering whether or not what you're hearing, whether it be from Dane or any of the other guests that we have on the program, if it resonates with you. And if it does, it seems to me, Dane, that you need to do something about that.
Well, and you talk about intuition and, in a trauma, and you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't have some degree of what's with the terminology trauma looping within them, mm-hmm. Actual trauma. And that's what throws your compass off. Those things that are out of aligned with the truth about you, those things that have a belief in separation. So once again, when you're able to be fully present in this moment, and that is taking a bit of a quantum leap here, where we have risen above the level of thought, we are present with what is, things are very clear and very obvious. And you talk about 20/20 vision. There's no effort in 20/20 vision. You're present. When you're present, things are very clear and very obvious. So when we do this work, and one of the things I did not expect from this work, when I was doing this work, I just wanted relief. I was in this consistent state of fight or flight, and I just wanted relief. But what I didn't expect is when we do our inner healing work, when we slow those tapes down and bring those tapes to a stop, it creates space in us. That space is peace. And that's what naturally and automatically happens. We don't need to try to do that. When we do the healing work, when we give ourselves what we need, when we, go inside and listen and give that part a voice, and therefore bring it back into this present moment. And, that time is no longer, we haven't given ourselves back to that time. We've given the energy back and we can be present. Then that's what happens, is that space opens up that creates peace. And it automatically connects us to our authentic self, our higher self, source energy. And the characteristics that come with that source energy are peace, our power, our creativity, our abundance, our health, our harmony, our generosity. That's our nature. And we don't have to try. And, in the personal development field, like we talked about, it used to be that we would try to be that. We try to be the characteristics. We try to act that way. And I'm saying, no, don't act anyway. Do your inner work, listen, and let what wants to come out, come out. And as you learn that, first of all, that the event, the dysfunction you're experiencing in your life is coming from within you, with most people know now, and now learn that you can actually give yourself what you need, that you are your source, then what naturally occurs is your nature. It simply naturally comes through you, this peace, this power, this creativity, this harmony. That's your nature. There is no effort there. That is your hard wiring. And when you get these parts out of the way that have a belief in separation, automatically you get realigned with your nature. And you do not have to try. It is not efforting. It is not technique. It is who and what you are. And that sounds pretty lofty. And as you said, I can, speak until I'm blue in the face, but until you actually experience it, then you know. And there's no question, you just know. And it's an experiential game, and it is a different dimension. And that sounds odd too, but.
Just out of curiosity, to start dealing a little bit with maybe the structure. And I asked this question knowing full well that if you're concerned about the timing, how much time it's going to take, you need to kind of let that go. But just out of curiosity, and again, knowing everybody's different, how long does this process take for an individual? And because we have some of us have so many of these traumas, there's a lot that we have to work through, which may be the wrong term here when talking about neurotrauma, the neurotrauma process, healing process. But what about that from the human standpoint in terms of the duration between the trauma and the healing?
Yeah. And, I appreciate this conversation because clearly you have done work and you really understand this. And like you say, it's different for different people. We don't know. It depends on the person themselves and their character. It depends on, the depth of trauma, the duration of the trauma, the intensity of the trauma, and so on. So it really is different for different people. But it doesn't take that long. You're not going to sit on the couch for 2 and 3 years learning your story better. It's not about that. It's about creating a connection and giving yourself what you need. So I also want to be clear, it's not a quick fix.
Okay.
It's a relationship. And like any relationship, it takes time and it takes effort. And it was a challenge to put this book out. And the challenge was I didn't want people to take themselves to a place where they didn't know where to go from there, or they didn't feel comfortable, or didn't get the results that they could get, because most people are going to want to work with a facilitator first, and work with a facilitator until they get what we call traction. And traction is having a consistently healthy and positive relationship with that life within you. And that is different for different people. But when you do that, once you come to that level of traction, then you can take the work over on your own. And not to scare anybody away with this comment, but the work never ends. But it doesn't turn, like the healing work doesn't take forever, and it doesn't take as long as you might think. But there it goes into empowerment. There it will allow you, or even sometimes challenge you, to be more of who you really are, to let yourself out. Because as Dr. John Bradshaw said, who's does the foundational work, the wounded child turns into the wonder child. And this part that you helped to heal, to bring to this present moment, starts to become a source of great wisdom, great insight, clarity, and direction. So it's profound in that way, because it turns into full-on empowerment, and you get clarity. And this is where this is a whole other topic, but this is a segue to your higher consciousness that you always have access to whenever you want or need it.
Well, now, traumas for many, because they may have so many, it's like peeling an onion. Is that the same process that the neurotrauma healing process must, so to speak, go through with an individual? They've got to peel the onion. You just can't go for the core, slice it open and, that kind of thing. You literally do have to do it layer by layer.
We don't want the quantum leaps we think we do, because it takes far too long to recalibrate. Ask me, I'll tell you, because that's what happened for me. And it took me over 10 years just to get rebalanced. So yeah. And what I love, that's a different scenario though, because that scenario, somebody tried to force the trauma out of me and I was not even consciously present for that. So that was a different scenario. But with this, all the information comes from you. You will never be given more than you can handle, because we, as facilitators, when you work one-on-one with a facilitator, they will never give you any information. All we do is we facilitate you getting the answers, getting the connection, making the connection to within you. So all the information you get is from you. We'll help you to make it safe and make a good solid connection, and help you to show up for yourself, as some people can't show up for themselves, or show yourself compassion and so on. So we'll ensure that. But we know that you'll never be given more than you can handle, because first of all, you're always in charge. All the information comes from you, and we'll never ask you to do anything that you don't want to do. It's got to be that way. It has to be safe, because if it's not, it won't last. You're trying to go against what is actually happening inside of you. And your subconscious mind is by far your most powerful creative faculty.
There's a program, I'm not sure how much television you watch, but this program is, I believe it's on HBO, and it's called The Vow, and it's a documentary, and it has to do with a particular, I'm going to call it a personal growth development program. And the initials are ESP, and it is not extrasensory perception. I'll tell you that right now. And apparently when it first started, it had good intentions, all of that good stuff. And somehow, some way, somewhere along the way, those intentions changed. And it became unsafe, especially for the women. This is one of the problems that we have had down through the decades of these programs, where it's more group oriented. It's not one-on-one, it's group oriented, where initially the idea and the ideal, beautiful, wonderful, let's do it. LifeSpring, let's spring back into life. Let's, get our power back and really create and do some amazing things. And somewhere along the way, and I'm not saying this about LifeSpring because I don't know, but others have gone down a path that becomes unsafe. But the people that are involved in it, they don't really see that. It's kind of like not being able to see the forest for the trees. And I'm not generating a question here towards you and what you're doing. I'm just asking you in terms of people who've been through those kinds of programs and now they've experienced that kind of trauma. Have you come across people like that who maybe initially have been very skittish? They've heard about the neurotrauma healing process, but yeah, I know, but I went through, and I could use my examples of LifeSpring, and I went through Omega Vector and Delta Vector and da-da-da. And, it really didn't turn out well for me. I experienced a lot of stuff, and I'm carrying even more baggage now. You'd think I was going on a around the world cruise instead of a 7-day cruise because I'm carrying so much baggage now. What about those people? Have you come across folks who have come to you after having done all this other stuff?
All the time. And we have a lot of information. We have known how trauma works and known that the subconscious is by far our most powerful creative faculty, and that has been the drive behind our life. But we haven't had safe and direct access to it, or direct access in a safe and gentle way. So, like you say, there's a lot of people out there who, come and says, I've done a gazillion things, and, why would I bother doing this? Why would I just rehash this over and over again? And I have to say, I really like working with those people. And the reason I like working with those people is because they already know their stories. They've rehashed them over and over and over again. And it's all kind of hanging out there. And I don't say that I have great compassion for these people because, like you say, this can be the biggest crush to you or blow to your trust is going in a program like this, which really gains your trust and then leaves you hanging out there.
Yeah.
Or just, throws you away kind of thing. So, but in doing this work, when people come that know their stories and it's all just right there, it's like clean out work. We just haven't had access to it in an intimate way. And once again, it's about relationship. You get to create a relationship to the life within you. That doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. And the irony is when you do this work, when you give that part what it needs, over time you start to realize that you are your source. And that if you can't give that to you, if you can't give yourself the respect that you want, you can't get it out there. It won't come from out there. If you can't give yourself the attention, the time that you need, you're probably going to find people don't give you the time of day or don't give you the attention. If you can't give yourself the love that you are seeking, there's nobody out there that can fill that. So it can be, in a sense, a bitter pill to swallow. But when you get that, and when you do give yourself the love, you do give yourself the respect and the attention, guess what shows up? Automatically, as if by magic, somebody who cares about you and loves you, people who show you respect. This shows us how we work and how powerful we really are, and that, yes, we really are in control from the inside out, not the other way around. Most people live life totally backwards.
Would you say that the neurotrauma healing process is the next evolution from all of those other programs I made reference to going back to the 80s and 90s?
I mean, absolutely. And we can't, we look at now and some stuff that happened wasn't nice or wasn't good and they didn't get the results that they wanted. But it is all steps in the evolution. And we look at how things have moved forward. Something like NLP. NLP shows us that we can change or we can alter our experience from changing our energy from the inside. EMDR shows us those pictures are still in us from the past. And, we have psychotherapy, which, shows us we can go back to those times, and those times are still happening inside of us. So all those are different aspects, different sort of pieces of the puzzle of our learning, our evolution. Mm-hmm. And this has been called the next step in the evolution of our healing and our spiritual development, because It creates the connection, the intimate relationship with that life within us. And here's another bit of it doesn't necessarily have to be a quantum step, but when you realize this, when you understand this, it's huge that all of these dysfunctions, all of these unwanted behaviors, chronic conditions, even addictions, maybe they're there on purpose. Because as long as that keeps happening, if we keep looking outside of ourselves for healing, for addiction, for love, for whatever that is, eventually we realize it's not out there. We won't find it out there until we go inside. So maybe all these outer events are actually trying to drive us inside to where our power really is. And that's where, when you understand that, that's the start of reclaiming your power and letting your power out.
From your perspective, and through this process that is called the neurotrauma healing process, NTHP.
There you have it.
There you go. And you mentioned several other practices. I was very interested when we had a woman living up on the property where we live here in Santa Barbara, very interested in NLP, wanted to find out more about it and so forth, thought it was rather intriguing, and so forth. But there's some other things that are out there as well. I'm sure you've heard of the tapping method. All right.
Yep.
And we've had those folks on many years ago. We've had them on. The method hasn't really changed much, and that's fine. I mean, it's pretty fundamental, seems pretty simple. And again, we're not going to pick on any one in particular, but there are so many other modalities in that regard that are coming up each day. But you've gone to the core in that respect, saying you've got to go within. This process, the neurotrauma healing process, how does it take us within? What is I want to say the modality, not the method, but the modality that you use to take people inside, which for some, as you kind of alluded to at the beginning of the program, can be very scary because you're going to get to know who you are inside. So let's talk a little bit about that. I had another question in regards to trauma and those layers and so forth. I think we've exhausted that. But what about the modality in terms of this process?
Yeah, the foundation of the work is a left-right brain process, and we do a left-right brain writing process where the facilitator guides you, through this to, first of all, we access the subconscious mind through emotion. So we do what's called a snapshot, which gives us access to the subconscious mind. And through that, we do the left-right brain writing to actually create a connection and a relationship and give that part, that wounded part within you, or that part that has a limited, erroneous belief, we give that part a voice. And therefore, you get to understand why you're creating what you're creating in your life, why you're getting what you're getting, why you're maybe not getting what you say you want. So you get to find out what the fear is or what's been going on within you that has been stopping you, that has been in your way. And through that left-right brain process, once again, it's about inner compassionate connection. As children, and most of our traumas, and they say that our persona is set by age 5 or 6. And in that's our foundational programming. So a lot of times as kids, we make very irrational decisions. And I'm going to qualify why we make such irrational decisions, or can make irrational decisions, because when we're growing up as infants, who feeds us, who clothes us, who houses us, who nurtures us, ultimately, hopefully, who loves us, is our caregivers, our parents, ultimately. So growing up, that is our source. That is literally our version of God growing up. So if we get abused by our parents in some way, by our caregivers in some way, we can't make them wrong because they are our source. They are God in our eyes. So if it's not them, it must be me. And therefore we blame ourselves and turn it on ourselves. So there's that experiment that happened, and you know, they don't even admit it, but we all know there's been a couple different experiments. But there was one in the 40s and there's one with the royalty back in the 1800s or something, but where they took newborn babies and they put 20 in one side of the hospital and 20 in the other, and the one set of babies got loving and nurturing and cooing and fed and diapers changed and all that stuff, and the other 20 just got fed and just had their diapers changed. There was not allowed to be any contact, not even eye contact, no cooing, nothing like that. The experiment got stopped too late, and half of those babies that didn't get the nurturing and the contact died. And they were apparently healthy, no reason they shouldn't, but it just shows us how hardwired we are for love. Mm-hmm. As children, it can seem like a life or death thing if we do not get that love. So we will make ourselves, align ourselves, whether that means getting beaten or what have you, to get love. So the decisions we make as children are very irrational. So you have to have inner compassionate connection and not judge or try to fix or change that wound part in you, especially if it's a child, because you have to understand the psyche of a child. And you know, a lot of times that's what you're dealing with. And that being said, it doesn't take that long. That sounds like it could be really deep and intense, but it doesn't take that long. And as we connect with that part, we can give that part the safety it needs to unfreeze from that belief.
Well, I thoroughly encourage you folks. You might want to consider going to DaneStevensOnline.com. You find out more about Dane, the work he's doing through the neurotrauma healing process, and the book, Reclaim Your Power to Create Your Best Life, and how to permanently, that's what's interesting, permanently heal unwanted behaviors, chronic conditions, and addictions. Is it really permanent? You're not rewriting an individual's story here of the trauma. So the story is still the same. What are you doing?
So the term forgive is very misunderstood. When you forgive, you're giving the energy back to that time. Because what happens in trauma, it's still looping inside of it. You still have the energetic, you still have that same essence of that experience, whether it be from a car accident or war as an adult, or whether it be as a child, you know, from a trauma you experienced then. So when you are able to go back and connect with that part, and you know, we've heard the term, it happened in the past, oh, just forget it. Just, you know, it's already done. And that would be great if that's actually how we worked, but that's not how we work. And like I say, maybe the game's been set up that way to get us to go inside. So, but when we do give ourselves what we need, we give the energy back to that time. And we can be in this present moment and look and at the experience and see what happened and not be triggered, not have a reaction to it anymore. We, in a sense, you could say we have re-chosen, but nothing has changed except our response to it. We are here now, we are alive and well, we're healthy or what have you, and that's not happening anymore. So what's great about this too is, no, we're not saying forget the past. We're not saying drop it and negate it. It happened. And when you are able to heal, you can look back at your past and go, wow, that's where I came from. And that's your story. And it's not a bad story when you're healed. It's what brought you to here, where you are now. And this becomes a launching point for you expressing and letting who you really are come forth and letting yourself be who you really are. So it's phenomenal in that way, because then your life starts to make sense. And it led you up to this point, and a lot of times points you in a direction. And it's funny, I'll give you a little example. My other half, Annie B., when we got together, we used to go in high school, took a 25-year break. And I started to do this work, and this was before we got back together. And so I was working with people, and we got together, and I wasn't going to try and get her to do it, or so you got to do this. If anything, I just, really kept at bay. But after a while, she asked questions and wanted to know about it. Bless you. And And so, I showed it to her and she just embraced it and just really got it. And she has become a senior facilitator. But what's really cool about what happened is when she was younger, she used to read tarot. And, just for fun kind of thing. So just for fun, she went to another class. And this is like, 30 years later or whatever it was, or 25 years later. And she took a tarot class, and the person who was putting on the tarot class said, "You need to be doing this," and took her under her wing. And this is only her third year, I think. She's an in-demand reader. First year, she did like 700 readings. So it kind of lets you out. I mean, it's very clear that she's right where she needs to be in doing those readings. And, she just kind of goes, "Well, I didn't do anything." It lets you out, and it'll point you in the direction to let out your gifts, to let out who you are for the gifts to the world, shall I say. So it's really cool to watch people allow themselves to come out and allow themselves to be who they are. And that's what happens. We get out of our way, and who we really are comes forth. Not, who we really are, but our higher authentic self comes forth.
Right. And that's a term that's used quite often these days, be your authentic self, or be authentic. And a lot of people struggle with that term because they don't really understand what that means. Yeah. It's like, what do you mean be authentic? What you see is what you get is a lot of times what they'll say. And my perspective on something like that is, it's not what you see is what you get. That isn't it, because your ego and your personality are vested in what you see is what you get. And it's when you set that aside. I've actually had a number of experiences where my wife and I are watching television, and she'll leave the room, and sometimes she doesn't, but usually she'll leave the room. It might be during the end of the program and the credits are rolling and the music's playing, whatever it is, a movie, television show. And I'll start pondering on a deep level what I just saw. And usually it's documentaries, because I just am having a real hard time with movies and television shows, especially TV shows that drag on for 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 seasons. It's like, end it already. I think one of my favorite early British series was 4 episodes, and I was thrilled because I knew there was going to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was going to take place within about the length of a movie, and I can handle that. But I would sit there and ponder, and suddenly I would just get this overwhelming emotion, almost, and it wasn't necessarily a sadness. Sometimes it was, wow, this is incredible where we are and what we're doing and so forth. And just sort of an awe-inspiring moment with tears, almost tears kind of thing. And it's that place that we need to come from, that place of vulnerability, isn't it?
This work never stops because consciousness doesn't end. And, you talked about the evolution of us, how we've been like in the 80s as our parents, and they were default in the 90s. We took more responsibility in 2000, we're getting more.
Yeah.
And we're starting to realize that our thinking doesn't serve us, that the thinking mind is not the key, and you will not experience peace through the thinking mind. Right. Many techniques, as much as you want to, you can say all the affirmations you want, and you can do all the mind games that you want. You will never experience connection and peace through the thinking mind. And what I've come to understand is, we've made the ego bad and wrong. But when we understand that the thinking mind's job is to create separation, that it is the thinking mind that allows us. So once again, to go back to the fact that we know science has proven that we are energetic beings, energetic, AKA spiritual beings, that everything is circulating, everything's moving. There's nothing hard in the universe. We know that. That's fact. That's science. Mm-hmm. So the thinking mind is actually what allows us to appear separate, is what allows us to play this space-time game that we signed up for, whether you want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
So when we understand that the thinking mind's, first of all, job is to create separation, the more separation, the more alone, the more fear that gets created. So the more time you spend in your mind, the scarier this world gets. And the more separated, the more alone you feel. So we are starting to learn that. And I look at what's going on in the world today with the pandemic and with all the controversy, from everything from racism to, just the anger that is coming up. And I believe this is on purpose. I believe this is part of our evolution. Mm-hmm. And this is what has been in and is in the collective consciousness. And it's all come up. And in the healing world, they say, if you can't heal it, you can't feel it. Or if you can't feel it, you can't heal it. And we are all feeling it. We all are seeing it. It's all up. And therefore, it's up for healing.
Yeah.
And we are starting to go inside. And so many people are feeling afraid and feeling angry and frustrated and lost. And a lot of people are feeling a sense of loss too, because if not from job, from friends and not being able to get out there. So we are really been brought to a place of feeling, and it's good. And this maybe is the next step in our evolution of understanding that the thinking mind is just a tool, like Eckhart says. And when we rise above that, when we get to the point of essence, and I say feeling, but feeling, there's no label, there's no not a feeling without the mind, letting ourselves be in this present moment without thought. What you experience watching TV, that joy that almost brings you to tears.
Yeah.
That presence, you get to experience the presence, and not to use an overused word, but that love that is just present, that is the foundation of everything when we get out of the way.
One of the interesting aspects that I have found that has caused me to be bored with television and movies is it's the same old stuff over and over again. And it's like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Superman and Batman, and it was, of course, a fight throughout pretty much the entire movie. Sorry, folks, spoiler alert here. Okay. If you have not seen the movie or you're going to, you might want to turn this down. Okay. In the last 15 minutes of the movie, they finally stop out of either pure exhaustion or they've virtually destroyed just about everything around them. And they start talking. And it turns out that there was a misunderstanding between Batman and Superman over, I think it was either Batman's mother or Superman's mother. Okay. And they started dialoguing, and I'm going, why? Right, they're warriors, but it's like, if you guys had stopped and talked about this before, I realized the movie would have A, been boring, and B, been one of those shorts that would have maybe won an Oscar. Okay, but and I've seen a number of programs where the same scenario exists. You have this conflict that's going on for either 2 or 3 hours or 3 or 5 or 10 episodes. And then they finally sit down and dialogue at the end. Oh, gee, I'm so sorry. We blew up half of your crew and, and your vessels. And it's like, that to me, that's boring. It's like, come on, why are we still doing this? Why are we still doing this? A, in movies and television, and B, why are we still doing this in real life? This is just insane. In spite of the fact it has been said that, you and I are currently not in the middle of, but we are potentially collateral damage in the Third World War that has been going on for probably 10 or 11 years. It's the cyber war. Mm. And it is alleged the United States started it when they attacked the nuclear processing plant in Iran to destroy their centrifuges because they wouldn't abide by whatever, stuff they were supposed to abide by. And I remember seeing the documentary about all of the cyber wars, and this was a piece, just a small piece of it. And the Iranian individual they had said, "The Americans started this, but we will end it." And I'm just sitting here going, are you kidding me? And this is where I recall an interview I had with the author of East and West, something along the lines of Love and Fear in the East, something along those lines. And he said that he makes numerous trips to the Middle East, Israel, Palestine, etc. And he was sharing the story of how he would have these interfaith groups meeting of young people. And here's where the hope came from. And I've interviewed him 2 or 3 times, and he was surprised that that was one of my takeaways from our first interview was the conversations he has had with the young people, both Israelis and Palestinians, specifically those 2 groups. The young people are basically saying to him, we don't, the fight that's going on between these our two nations is not our fight. It's our parents' fight. We don't want any part of it. We want it to end. If you could we send both of these parties over to a desert island somewhere, let them battle it out, and let us go on with our lives to create a civilization that's productive, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of where I am these days. It's like, why? With all of the creativity that's around us. And then I start thinking about what you've said and other of our guests have said. This process that we are going through right now is not something to be overcome. It's something that we must go through in our question mark here, evolutionary process.
And the degree that we will stay in this is the degree that we block energy, the degree that we stay in the thinking mind and believe and follow the crazy maker, the thinking mind. So we are evolving, and right now, the addiction to thought is the addiction to drama. And it's been said that fear is the bluff of ego. And anybody who's been in the healing world knows that, or even coaching world, that fear is a greater motivator than pleasure.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that's the way that it goes. Mm-hmm. So in that, we look at something like trauma, and we keep going out there to try and fix ourselves for long enough to realize, oh, nothing out there works until we get driven inside. So the irony of this time too is, yes, we're seeing it collectively, but the only way your life can change is from inside of you.
When we go again.
Change our world changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the thing is that sounds, very simplistic, but when you learn that when you give yourself the love that you desire, then love shows up.
Right.
When you give yourself the make yourself feel safe inside, then, safety shows up, and the things that make you feel safe show up. You have the key to your life. You have the key to life.
It may sound simplistic, but it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So do your work, and that's how we change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you've raised a very interesting point here that I want to go down this particular path. No, folks, it's not a rabbit hole. It's a path. We have blocks, and now we'll refer to them as trauma that you are dealing with through the neurotrauma healing process. Through the book that you have right now called Reclaim Your Power to Create Your Best Life and How to Permanently Heal Unwanted Behaviors, Chronic Conditions, and Addictions. And I'll use the analogy of water. Water has been used as an analogy for our finances, our money, our prosperity, our abundance. And I've often told this story of how when either a drain is clogged, be it the shower, the toilet, the sink in the kitchen, whatever, that I, understanding the metaphor, I want to get that clog unclogged as soon as possible. Okay. Even though it's not my prosperity, but the metaphor is so important to me when it comes to the abundance and the prosperity in my life. I want to maintain the flow. Okay. Subsequently, or in addition, if the pump that pumps the water out of the well that is then gravity fed into our cottage that we live in, or the water heater that holds the hot water, and so on and so forth, and that pressure is not maintained, then we don't have the inflow. But the drains are working fine. And so I want to get that fixed as quick as possible. So then I call the people who take care of that and say, don't have any water pressure. And they go and check it out, and, and it gets fixed. But if you have, say, on a creek or even a small river, what have you, let's say you have some gophers. Is that right? To build the dams? Yeah, gophers.
Well, the beavers build the dams.
Beavers. Thank you. Not gophers. Beavers. Wrong. I think the gophers would drown. Gophers burrow up under the ground.
That one, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But you've got the beavers who build these dams, and the water flow stops or is reduced considerably. What you do through this process is you remove those blockages to get the flow going again. And specifically, as you mentioned earlier, the flow of energy, which is everything, right? Yeah.
Funny you would say that.
And when that happens, if I may, no pun intended here, it then opens the floodgates of opportunity and possibility in our lives. Anything and everything could happen to us, because now we've got the flow. We've got things moving through and not blocked.
What if life was alive? What if life was loving and intelligently loving?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't have to look very far to see that. We are hurtling through space at 60,000 miles an hour right now. We are circulating at 1,200 miles an hour right now. Yet here we are in this calm, still place. Our blood, or our heart, is pumping hundreds of gallons of blood a day. We see through an eye which is not even logical. We don't even know how that is. Our hair is growing, our heart is beating, and we're not doing any of it. We can sit here and do nothing, and everything works perfectly. So what if we took that a step further? What if we stopped? And what if we, the blocks inside of us that have a belief in separation from our authentic self, as we, heal those, I don't say remove them, as we realign with the nature of our being, the truth, and let that energy flow, we let life, and life softens, and we start to realize that life is actually for us. Life is actually working and is responding to us. And it responds to us in much more and much bigger ways than we can imagine. It knows our wants and needs and can fulfill it. Mm. And, this conversation has gone further than I expected. I have the next book, which is called Unleash Your Genius, which is coming out in 2021, which goes into the empowerment aspect, the reclaim your power to create your best life. That deals with trauma, because I didn't think we could take people from dealing with this deep-seated trauma to what I'll call spiritual liberation in the same book. So I broke them into 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
But, as we do this, we learn to be. And when I say be, we learn to let life, and we get to experience that life is loving and giving, and that we don't have to work hard. We don't have to slave. We don't have to break our backs to make a living, and we don't have to, compete against other people and all this stuff that is based in separation, which comes from this. We are evolving, and thank God, we're now letting life, and we can live in harmony with life. And, maybe this plane isn't for that. Maybe we're always going to have that conflict because this is about the game we play people are coming to find themselves. But for the people who this resonates for, the people that are ready to stop doing drama, who are ready to live in harmony with life, it's available, it's happening now.
What's interesting about drama, I as I've already alluded to, as far as these programs, movies and television shows that we watch, comedies I love. There's usually some drama in there too, but I love to laugh. So I watch a lot of the cartoons. Okay, I'm sorry, folks. I like Bob's Burger. I like Family Guy. I like American Dad. I like some of the programming they have on American Swim. Adult Swim, I should say, that network. I'm sorry, I grew up with Warner Brothers, Bugs Bunny, and Porky the Pig, and so on and so forth.
Bugs Bunny, huh?
No, you never can.
Looney Tunes, gotta like it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, even the superheroes, the cartoons, the Hall of Justice, I think was what it was, something like that. Anyway, and so these days, when I am having, I guess what I'll call a challenging time with a particular individual, my wife, she'll do the same for me too. We'll get in the truck as we head home, and we will start to vent. Now, certainly we're not attacking each other, so we know, we're both safe. It's a safe space inside the truck there. And we start talking about, oh yeah, I went through this, and boy, I just want to tell them blah, 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 which I would never do. But it's like, okay, I got to get it out. I can't tell that person these things that I want to say because it wouldn't be appropriate. It wouldn't be productive. It would be counterproductive to the process that we are in. It's kind of like when I hear on radio and television about whether it's politics or otherwise, and there's name calling. I mean, I worked for a Christian station for 15 years in the 80s and early 90s, and there was constant name calling. And nowadays, my first response when I start hearing that stuff is, we got lots of problems in this world. How is that helping? It's not helping. And then I go back to the construct of words having power. Why would you say those words? Why? Well, because they're idiots. They're stupid. They're dumb. I talked with a guy about education, a college professor. I said, I really think everybody deserves to have an education. His response to that statement was, no, not everybody deserves to have an education because some people are stupid. I couldn't believe my ears. And I thought, how is that helping? Because I'm not talking anymore about a formal 4-year college, okay? Education comes in many stripes, as it were. So as far as this aspect of things are what they are, I have an analogy, if I can share this with you real quickly here before we wrap up, and that is I look at the macrocosmic world and the microcosmic world. And we ooh and ah over everything that happens on both of those levels. You're looking through the Hubble telescope at supernovas and asteroid belts and all of that cool stuff. And you see the explosions and this. And ooh, wow. It's like we're watching fireworks, right? Well, the same thing when you're looking through an electron microscope at live cells moving around and doing their thing. Ooh, ah. But when it comes to this level where you and I live, there's no ooh, ah. It's either joy or fear. And it's like, wait a minute. If out there, it just is what it is. There's no judgment on the part of the universe towards itself. And in the microcosmic world, there's no judgment on the part of itself. Then I'm going to remove the judgment on this world and say, it just is what it is. And it's just a process that we happen to be going through because we chose to live, be born and live in this time. Is that where you want people to get to in one sense, when they have gone through the neurotrauma healing process?
So to be present is to be aligned with, call it truth, call it love, call it life, call it whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. But there is no judgment there. You're connected to all and everything. And does that mean you're not going to have challenges? No. But when those challenges come up, you know that your response, I mean, if it brings out something negative in you, it brings up anger, it's like, oh, and you can say, thank you for showing me that I still have anger inside of me. And you go inside and you have the tools to give that part what it needs, not to be angry. And it's phenomenal because when you give that part what it needs, the feeling subsides. So you get to become your source. You get to become what you are, source, God in form. So to be in this world beyond judgment means to put this in its place. And when you're present like that and you're not believing your thoughts and your thoughts are not your reference point, you live in love. And that sounds, to some, that may sound absolutely ridiculous. But you can be in love because that is your very nature. That is our very nature. And once again, you know, this planet we live on, you know, it may be a place where, you know, we have the conflict to keep bringing us inside. And, you know, maybe we, to you know, really live in a completely loving world, we may be beyond this planet. I don't know. But we as individuals can. I really believe with what's going on now, you know, we keep bringing ourselves to the brink, potentially, and we rise up. Life is a negative and a positive pole, or energy, I should say, is a negative and a positive pole. That negative pole rises because it's calling the positive. So I really believe that we are evolving. I believe that we are coming back home. And, you know, in that, you know, we're you know, being brought together globally with this pandemic, you know, recently. And now, you know, it's really, everything is up, especially in the US, I think you're experiencing it, but all over the world, we're experiencing it. So now at that positive pole, energy, our energy needs to rise. We're being called to rise. Yeah. So I don't think that's a very clear answer, but I'm saying that you can live in love. Yeah. And whenever we do have this, like you talked, it's either, you know, loving or fear kind of thing. And that's the connection to the mind. It'll forever be up and down, and that's drama. Yeah. So, you know, having a spiritual practice and doing our inner work, you can rise above that and you can live a life that you love to live. Yeah. And let yourself out. And it is not through effort. I mean, yeah, it's going to, you know, you have to decide and you have to do your inner work. And, you know, sometimes that can be challenging. But it's to bring yourself to a place of connection. The world softens and you start to get in a dance with the world because it is responding to you and you know it. And you have the keys to your life because you have the tools to go inside and give yourself what you need to bring yourself back into alignment with what you really are. Yeah. Love. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if it does or not.
No, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And it answers the question when it comes to the challenges, if you will, dealing with this dualistic world, because it's the same thing that you were just talking about. Hindus call it Maya. This is nothing but an illusion, although I prefer Lewis Black's pronunciation. It's all an illusion. It's just an illusion. And it's a beautiful thing. This is a wonderful place to live. I've been sharing with our listeners, Dane, that we're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways just aren't working. Just look around you. They're not working. And this was prior to the pandemic.
Right. And I have to add one more thing that I kind of missed. Yeah, it's just the fact that, you know, the foundation that is understand that we're spiritual, that we're not this physical body. I mean, you talk about the illusion, but understand that we don't die.
That's right.
When we die, our weight doesn't change. So, you know, that's kind of the foundation of it all, of being annihilated. Anyway,
enlightened,
wiped out. There we go.
There you go.
And us dying. And you know, when we understand that that's not true, that we came here to experience this time-space reality, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience to reveal our divinity, it takes the criticalness and the fear ultimately out of the game.
It's just so cool. It really is. And when I tell people on this program about looking for those new ways of living, I'm not saying that this is an awful, icky, terrible place we've got to get out of here. Absolutely not. I think that, first of all, we need to be grateful for where we are and who we are and what we are doing. Okay. But that does not mean that there isn't room, shall we say, for improvement. Okay. I honestly do believe, though it may be idealistic, it may be Pollyanna, it may be utopian. Okay, I'm sorry, it might be. I honestly believe that we could reach a place in our lifetime, if we chose to do it, I mean, really chose to do it, where every person on the planet, all 8 billion of them, could realize their potential, realize their life's purpose, and also basically have, in a manner of speaking, I don't want to say from a material aspect necessarily, everything that they could possibly want. But when I say that, it's in the context of understanding what your life's purpose is. Why are you here? What is it that you're here? Why did you come here? What are you going to do for not just yourself, but for the rest of humanity? And maybe not all 8 billion people. I'm not saying you got to cook 8 billion cookies, okay? But maybe there's a group of people in your community. And I don't know if you've ever heard of LBL, which is Life Between Lives therapy. It's a hypnosis process. And it has to do with reincarnation. I've been through one of them, and I really liked my last life before I came here. It's very cool. And then there's the learning about that space between the two lives of what goes on, what happens. And it's not necessarily guided. You're not being told what to see. You're asked, what are you seeing, nice, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling? Okay. And then you describe it. So you've made the comment a number of times in reference to, alluding to, shall we say, reincarnation, that we, and I'm curious about that in light of this process. We've got plenty of trauma to deal with from this lifetime. I'm 60, okay? So I've got plenty of trauma to deal with. What about past life trauma?
So what I say to people who want to go into their past life, I say, don't go into your past life. It's all happening now. That being said, if a past life stuff, something comes up, you let it come up. Don't go seeking.
Don't put a label on it.
We got enough stuff to do with this right here, right now. Yeah. You don't need to go back to the past. But if it does, and sometimes it will come up. Sometimes we'll have to deal with past life stuff. There's no question. And people who really follow like somebody who becomes a facilitator and so on, it's just about a given that you're going to end up doing your past life work.
Yeah.
And there's no question. And, the thing with past life stuff is it's not, it's stuck in there because somebody yelled at you. It's some big event that occurred. And, but, we do inner child work, and you connect with the inner child. And in the first session, we want people to connect to that inner life and to know that it's real. And it's most time that's what happens. And, past life is no different. It's just another dimension. And it's still, the thing is, this is where you get to learn that it's all happening right here and right now. And as, who's the comedian? George Carlin said, time's just an invention, so everything doesn't happen all at the same time. And that's about right.
Yeah.
And because you'll see that experience that you keep happening, there's a past life event that it has that same essence that is still stuck in you, which keeps picturing itself. So to heal the past life stuff is the same as doing the inner work, whether it be inner child work or, whatever trauma stuck inside of you. It's the same process, bringing it into this present moment where it's not happening anymore.
Yeah. Trauma is trauma, whether it's present life or past life. Doesn't matter what label you put on it from that standpoint. Trauma is trauma. And I'll have you allude to, expound on this concept, if you would, and then we'll wrap things up here. And that is, we all have different stories in relationship to our trauma, but we all experience essentially the same emotions. Okay? Fear is fear, hate is hate, anger is anger, envy is envy, et cetera, et cetera. Love is love, joy is joy, bliss is bliss. Yep. And it's like the stories may be different, but the emotions are the same. Sounds like the opening to a television show or something. So how essential is it? It sounds to me like it is rather important to deal with the stories. The emotions across the board, the same. The stories, are we reframing them in a different perspective, I guess? That's kind of, and I know this is sort of asking the same question again that I asked earlier, but sort of from a different angle.
Well, it kind of like referring back to what we spoke about, your life, you're on purpose, and you've always been on purpose. So when we deal with a person, yeah, we're dealing with your life and what happened. And no, we're not trying to change it. We just need to take the sting, take the reaction, take that negative energy that's still stuck inside of you. We're taking that out of you. So, and as we do that, you can look back at these events that happened in your life, and they're events that helped to form you. And they're what got you to here now. So not to negate them, not to change them, but to acknowledge them. Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's your life, and it's always been on purpose. So once again, doing this work, doing the inner healing work, it makes your life make sense and allows you to look at your life and go, wow, look where I came from. Look what happened. Wow. And you can look at it and not be triggered by it, not react negatively to it, but see your life, and your life starts to make sense. So once again, like you said, not about changing anything, not about getting rid of it. And, in that, in our healing, most of the time, the North American way of healing is, how do I get rid of this?
Yeah.
Wrong question. Because that question says it was wrong, that it's bad, and it's not supposed to be there, and it negates it. So it doesn't give it life. It doesn't give it energy.
Yeah.
It blocks. It's another block. So it's not how do I get rid of this? It's what is this?
Yeah.
Ask the question, what is this? That, first of all, takes you inside and allows you to listen and to understand. And that understanding is your understanding as to what you've been creating in your world, in your life. And it creates that inner compassionate connection through listening, through paying attention, and through learning how to love yourself, which is what my job is. So
well, I'll tell you, for those who have regrets and wish they could go back and change things, let me tell you, if you like the person that you are now, in general, for the most part, if you go back and you pull that thread and you remove that event out of your life, you are no longer the person that you are today, because it's those experiences that have made you who you are. And that may very well be, as you've stated, Dane, part of our individual evolutionary process, our transformation. And you just can't. Are there things I wish that I hadn't done? Sure. I wanted my first marriage to last 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Sure I did. Because I was looking to beat my parents at their own game, so to speak. I mean, they've been married, let's see, 2016, it was 60. So they're 64 years married.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. My dad's 89. My mother's 86. Okay. Still kicking, still going strong, still sequestered and not having visitors. I was going to fly out there and visit, but they said no. And I said, I understand. I don't want to be held responsible. Hopefully I am not a carrier. But anyway, it just, folks, this life is just unreal and incredible and beautiful and fantastic. And we need to reclaim our power. So reclaim your power to create your best life. My guest today has been Dane Stevens. DaneStevensOnline.com is the website that you want to go to find out more about how to permanently heal unwanted behaviors, chronic conditions, and addictions. And he is, of course, through this particular work, introducing the neurotrauma healing process. Give us the title of the new book coming out in 2021 that we may very well, I shouldn't even say we may very well, we will have you back on this program to talk about.
Awesome. It's called Unleash Your Genius, and it introduces the soul recognition process, which is in the empowerment aspect of this work, because the work, it's just the continuation from the neurotrauma healing process. You go into the empowerment aspect and learn how to feed yourself in the different aspects of your being. So,
recognition. Are there precogs involved in that? You know, I could not resist. This is wonderful, Steve. Dane Stevens, I want to thank you so much for sharing this time with us. Normally, I would say, boy, you know, if you're out here in Santa Barbara, we'd love to have you stop in and do an in-studio interview, because the energies are even better face-to-face in person. Yes. And maybe one day, yes, either in 2021 or, I don't know, 2022, whatever. Yeah. You know, time is relative.
We just finished a book tour down the West Coast. We're just in your nape of the woods, just in February, I guess it was. So yeah, next book next year. Maybe we can make it happen next year.
I hope we can. I certainly hope we can. I do have 3 final questions for you before we wrap up, which you may have answered during the interview, but I like asking the questions directly. Before I do, however, I need to remind our listeners that this program is here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday mornings at 1 a.m. streaming live at richarddugan.com, as well as the podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, and many other locations that you folks are reposting the interviews to. We're also on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Richard Dugan. Just go there, type in Richard Dugan and or Tell Me Your Story, and you'll see my smiling face with that black hat. And go ahead and just listen to what we have up there. We're going to keep putting them up there as long as our guests will allow us to videotape, which is an old term to be using, but nonetheless, video recording. And we hope that you'll do just that. And if you would like to support the work we're doing, we would love your support in more ways than one. That's why we have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. And we'll take any donations, and we'll take energetic support as well. And don't forget about the 2020s, the decade of perfect vision. Got 9 years, folks. And we hope that you don't stop at 2029 to go within. I mean, that's like the core of reclaiming your power that Dane has spoken to us about today. So please, I implore you, I won't beg, I'll implore, to go within. All right. First of my 3 questions are, who is Dane Stevens?
Boy, that's a good question. I've been asking myself for that one for how long now? So Dane Stevens is a soul evolving, and who he is today is just potentially a different version tomorrow, kind of thing. I'm a very fortunate soul who has managed to stumble upon something that gives us access to our inner life in a safe and gentle manner. And boy, that's a good question, Richard. Now you got me. I wasn't ready for this one. Well, soul evolving. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
A very happy and joyous soul evolving, who is really a part of life now, and a happy part of life. That's who I am.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
So this work is too simple and too obvious not to become mainstream. So I just really want to have it be, when I say mainstream, I don't know how that looks exactly, but just to have it available for people and to help people, just to have this process be available to people that want and need it, and to have it continue to free people from their past, from their thinking and erroneous beliefs, and help them to bring them present. So just have it be more and more available. and be used more and more, and bring in more and more people into enlightenment.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to let life flow through me. My life's purpose is to be a conduit and to let this love intelligence express through me how it will. And in that, it's just been a real pleasure and a joy to let this life come through me and not know what's up next. So to live the adventure of that in knowing that it is my source, it is my safety, it is my supply, it is my life and my love. So that's my life's purpose, to let that energy flow through me how it will. And I just know that it's great.
Dane Stevens, again, thank you so much for joining us. A reminder, it's danestevensonline.com. And you can also find the book there, Reclaim Your Power to Create Your Best Life, talking and introducing the neurotrauma healing process. I want to thank you for listening to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lol.